Meet the specialized Tero X. It's like a big German SUV. You know, Germans, they always slap fenders and pannier racks and foot stands and lights on all of their mountain bikes, it seems. So I feel that this bike is primarily designed for the German market, but maybe we in the Nordic countries can learn something from the Germans. So in my mind, this is an adventure bike that can be used for backpacking, but also for touring and maybe some light mountain biking as well. So this kind of peculiar bike is based on Levo hardtail. And what I feel is great is that it's got a full powered motor and proper components. And the brakes are code brakes, which are very powerful, which is great to see on an e-bike in general, especially an e-mountain bike. It's also got a dropper, which is very nice to get the saddle out of the way in the descents when you're standing up, to be able to move freely across the bike. And this bike has got an external display, which can be tilted in different angles. But that minimalistic controller is something that we recognize from the Turbo Levo, for instance. And there's an extra button here, which you probably have realized. It's for the lights that are installed on this bike and are connected to the battery directly. And that's a very convenient thing, of course, on this type of bike, which you probably use as a commuter bike or adventure bike, even when it's dark. And there's a rear light as well, of course. So in essence, this is really a mountain bike, but by adding fenders, lights and a foot stand, this is more of an adventure bike in my book. I don't think I would take this bike out a red trail here in the Bikepark, but I will try a blue trail. And I feel the benefit with this type of bike is that it is a proper bike, which can take some abuse with proper mountain bike components on it. So when it gets gnarly and you hit some rougher trails, this bike can cope with it. I don't know the suspension travel. It does look like, I don't know, what is it? 140 in the front, maybe 130 in the rear. And that's plenty enough for the types of trails that this bike is intended for. So when you think about it, maybe this bike makes a lot of sense, but I'm not going to take this bike out on a red trail or anything. But I will take it out on a green trail.
I feel that this is exactly the sort of terrain that this bike is built for. It's very comfortable over this piece of grass and dirt, which is rougher than what shows on camera. The suspension does an excellent job here, and I do have a rather upright seating position, despite the long reach on the Tero X. It's a big bike with a long wheelbase too. I noticed that the motor is not as powerful as on the Turbo Levos I've been riding, and sure enough, there are different levels of power output depending on what Tero X version you choose. This bike has got 70 Nm, which still is plenty enough to comfortably take me up this slalom hill. Combine that with the big battery and cross-country tires, I suspect that the range is excellent. Again, I do like the fact that the components on this bike are proper mountain bike components. This makes the bike work well in more situations, and you don't need to stop and walk when the trail gets rough. The head angle is 67 degrees, which I think is a good sweet spot for this type of bike and makes it feel agile enough through the bends. When testing, I didn't realize that this bike is a mullet bike in the larger sizes, which means that the front wheel is larger than the rear wheel. This too makes cornering easier. What's not to like then? Well, despite the fact that this bike is based on a mountain bike, it's not a Bikepark bike. Jumps and drops are better left to the Turbo Levos and other more sports-oriented eMTBs, but an occasional green downhill trail does work. For all other types of riding, my opinion is that this is a solid bike that can do so much more than to just take you to and from work. It's also a bike for your weekend adventures.